truly African.
Ghanaians believe that their transformation will not occur on the back of parties, but on the back of leadership. It's a question of leadership.
It is yet another week, and just as we've been doing for the past weeks, we have been delving deep into the Great Transformational Plan on Alan Speaks Prime Time show, hosted by me, Kwame Owusu Danso. This week, we are looking at three very important sectors of the economy, which finds expression in the Great Transformational Plan. We're going to be looking at agriculture. We're going to be looking at industry or industrialization, and we're going to be looking at tourism. I have the privilege of having with me the Honorable Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen. Sir, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
And I must admit that the feedback from the discussions we've been having have been very phenomenal. People are actually excited that you have not just put out a policy or a manifesto document, but you are actually explaining into great detail the specifics in that document, and people are very happy. It's a novelty, and so we want to say a big thank you to you first of all. Before we even proceed to look at the other areas that I've mentioned. The youth policy, I must admit, is one that resonated with the young people.
Okay,
I was driving through town and someone stopped me and said, "Oh, please, can I get a copy of the GTP, particularly the one that looks at the youth policy?" So you must be very proud of yourself that you are doing something very, very phenomenal. Okay. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Jody.
This week, we have a daunting task because we do know that some other political parties are launching, or some have launched their manifestos, and it's quite axiomatic that portions of the manifesto, as you've seen them, were lifted. I should say were lifted from, and I don't mince words. Everybody knows me that I'm a very plain journalist. I speak my mind. Lifted from your GTP document, and so we have a daunting task of expediting the process so that the subsequent ones that are yet to be launched will not, will not be lifted from your document. So today we are looking at three very key sectors of the economy. I'm happy that we've looked at the macro economy, and you dealt with a number of them. We looked at revenue mobilization and optimization and all of that last week and last 2 weeks. Brilliant. This week we are looking at industrialization, we are looking at tourism, and then we are looking at agriculture. You are the master planner when it comes to industrialization. Yeah. Indeed, you were the one who conceived and hatched the concept of one district, one factory. And so I dare say that you have a lot to tell us when it comes to industrialization. First of all, give us a general overview of your industrialization policy and how you intend to see that to fruition.
Good. Thank you very much, KOD.
Yes, sir.
It's good to see you once again.
Likewise.
First, let me take it off from where we left off with the macroeconomy.
Very well.
In any economy, what the macro does is to provide the foundation for the microeconomy. So whilst the macro is a critical input into overall economic growth and development, it is not a sufficient condition. It's a necessary condition for growth, but not a sufficient condition for growth. So
what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so yes, the macro provides the foundation. As I said, you need low inflation, you need a stable currency, you need low interest rates, you have to be able to manage your debt and optimize your revenue, all the kinds of things that we discussed.
You manage expenditure,
yes,
fiscal and non-fiscal aspect of it. Yeah.
So that provides stability to the economy. But if you want to move from stability to growth, then you need to move from the macro to the micro. So at the micro level, then you are affecting individual enterprises.
Right.
To what extent does an enterprise take advantage of low inflation? What is the effect of a stable currency on businesses? So that's where the link between macro and micro comes in. And very often, if you look at the experience of most developing countries, such as ours, our economy has been literally, for use of a better word, managed by our development partners.
Okay.
Whether it's the multilateral institutions like the World Bank and IMF or the bilateral institutions.
Right.
And they have a reason for doing that. When they give you money to support your economy, they are interested in shaping the path for the use of the money.
Right.
Now, almost invariably, the support that is provided by our development partners supports the macro framework. That's why you're always hearing about macroeconomic stability. Yeah. Yes. But the stability that comes out of macro policy interventions, as I said, is necessary, but it's not a sufficient condition for growth, meaning that you have to go beyond the stability of the macro environment now to provide enterprise level support to businesses. That is where then you start generating the real impact that affects individuals. So there's a very critical link between the macro and the micro. So having talked about the macro in the previous episodes, now we want to deal with the micro. And as you rightly pointed out, the starting point is industrialization.
Right.
But one would ask, but why is industrialization so important? It's important for a number of reasons. Number one, when you industrialize, you expand the economy.
Right.
When you expand the economy, what it means is that you increase the level of production of goods and services in the economy.
Right.
Now, when you increase production, it means that the companies that are now producing are able to earn income from their production. When they earn income, then government is able to generate additional revenue from the work that the manufacturers and the producers are engaged in.
Right.
So first is about expanding the economy through the production of goods and services.
Okay.
Number two, through that, directly and indirectly, you are also incentivizing companies who produce to earn more income. And when they earn more income, government is able to earn more revenue. So that's number two. Number three, when you expand production, you are in a position to increase your exports. Because if you don't produce, you can't export.
You can't export,
And when you export, you earn more foreign exchange. And more foreign exchange means that you stabilize your currency. So that's the third one. The fourth one is when you industrialize, it means you are producing also goods which ordinarily you are importing. So that's what is described as import substitution. And we've discussed the benefits of being able to conserve foreign exchange by producing goods that you ordinarily import. And then last but not the least, because you are increasing production, you are also increasing jobs and the creation of employment.
Right.
So you can see that it's a whole gamut of benefits that arise from a policy of industrialization. So it is no wonder that the most advanced economies in the world also happen to be the most industrialized. You can name them: the United States, China, Japan, Germany, France, Korea. You know, in that order, Brazil, all of them are also the most industrialized. So there's a very critical correlation between industrialization and economic growth and development.
What excites me about the industrialization policy is in respect of the fact that you have actually clustered them under 6 pillars.
Yeah.
And so it is imperative that we lay emphasis on the 6 pillars. And I'm going to dwell on the industrialization bit, a lot today, particularly because of what potentially it will do for our economy. So we are looking at boosting local production and productivity.
Yeah.
How can you explain that aspect of, the industrialization leg of the GTP?
Yes. I've been Minister for Trade and Industry.
Yes.
In 2 previous administrations. And in both cases, I initiated very innovative, far-reaching industrial development programs or policies. Under Kufuor's government, it was the Presidential Special Initiatives targeting 4 industrial sectors. Those were the PSIs. Fast forward, during President Kufuor's regime, I also initiated the One District, One Factory initiative. So if, as we've said, industrialization is about increasing production, then the One District, One Factory was designed primarily to achieve that objective.
Indeed.
And what it meant was that let us identify businesses or entrepreneurs and support them with incentives now to be able to establish medium to large scale industries in the various districts in our country. So it means that you are bringing industry to the people.
Right.
And you are decentralizing industrial development. We all know that almost all our industries are concentrated either in Tema, Accra, Kumasi.
Indeed, or Takrady.
But the One District, One Factory initiative sought now to send industrial development down to our rural communities.
Let's stay on that a bit.
Yes.
In your estimation, did it succeed? Because it's a question that a lot of people have been asking.
Yes, yeah.
And I think we need clarity on it and perhaps put that final nail in that coffin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did it survive? Okay.
Yes.
That's the first question.
Yes, yeah.
If yes, how were you able to do it? If no, why did it fail?
Okay. Now, I think it's been one of the most successful policy interventions in our country since independence. And there's no doubt about that. By the time I was exiting from government, we had, through the One District, One Factory program, been able to support 269, or let's say over 260 companies or projects. Some of them new projects or new companies, the others that were old or existing companies that needed to be revamped. And I think there's one clarification that needs to be made.
Please.
The program framework was meant to support not only new companies in the districts, but also to be able to help revive existing ones.
Okay.
So when people are making commentaries or negative comments about this, they often talk about, well, you said this was to support industrial development. Yes. But if, for example, there's a company in a particular district that has already been established, why would you want to, under this program, still want to establish a new one when you are better off putting in money to support the existing one to become more viable?
Okay.
So it's for both new companies and existing companies. I'll give you one example.
Please do.
Daku Farms.
I remember Daku Farms.
Used to be the leading
poultry
company.
Yeah.
Not only in Ghana, in the whole of West Africa.
Indeed.
But because of the economic downturn over so many years, it almost went bankrupt. And when I started the One District, One Factory program, in that particular district, I decided that instead of incubating a new factory, since it fits within the framework, I decided that government should put or provide support to Akropong farms now to revive. And it's amazing the comeback of Akropong farms.
Okay.
And there are many other examples.
Okay.
But the thing to remember is that if through a program like this, you are able to support so many companies, existing, new and existing, to be able to start working productively, you are creating jobs. You are also providing an opportunity for those companies who can export to export. You are providing an opportunity for those who can replace imports or substitute imports to do so. And government is earning more revenue through some of the corporate taxes. So the first policy prescription in the GTP in respect of industrialization is to put more resources into one district, one factory.
Okay.
And there's absolutely no doubt that if we can extend the reach of the one district, one factory and move beyond one district, one factory to as many factories as possible in each district, that is the key to Ghana's transformation.
Is that why you're saying that you review the implementation framework?
Yes.
So what was the implementation framework?
Okay.
And permit me if I'm asking this because
it's very important.
It's your brainchild.
And it's very important.
And so, we need to better understand going forward
what we sought to do.
Exactly. And how you intend to review the implementation of it.
Yes.
Oftentimes my questions have been predicated on our inability to show a clearer path as to how we are going to sustain a policy after the implementation of it.
Yes.
And that is why I am asking these questions. So because you said you want to review the implementation.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean that there was implementational problems that you think that going forward you review it, particularly because now you have, first-hand understanding of the practicalities, that engulfed the execution of it. So is that what it is? And what were the challenges? So that, because once you tell us the challenges, then we know that, okay, that is why it was not to every district, but it was to some districts. So when he gets the opportunity to become the president proper, then we say that, okay, now I have it. So let me now extend it beyond the scope or beyond the peripheries of the district that, experience this.
So the first challenge was...
Yes, please.
In the event that there is no entrepreneur or businessman in a particular district that comes forward with a desire to be part of the one district, one factory, does it mean that that district is then excluded from the 1D1F program? This is an important decision that needs to be made going forward.
Okay.
And the response that I have, or the GTP has, is that after the first phase of the one district, one factory, it has become clear that there are some particular districts that for one reason or the other are disadvantaged.
Okay.
Because this is a demand-driven program. Government cannot impose a factory on any district. You need somebody to generate an interest and generate the demand. And then government goes in to support that person. So in districts where there is no demand coming from any individual, then government can, under very special circumstances, then incubate the setup of a particular company. And remember, all the factories are meant to take advantage of the natural resource endowment in that district. So sometimes government needs to show the way.
Okay.
Only to show the way. Because if government shows the way and is able to put in some resources and actually incubate the particular factory, then it may become more attractive Now that the factory is working, it will become attractive to any entrepreneur who ordinarily would not even have thought about going down to a particular rural community or a district to establish a one-to-one factory. So that's one, meaning that now in the second phase of the one-to-one factory, the GTP then anticipates that those districts that have not been covered in the phase will now have another opportunity through this mechanism to be able to now also take advantage of one-to-one.
Right.
That's number one.
Brilliant.
Number two is, to what extent can government continue to advance support to one-to-one factory companies? And the second phase anticipates that the one-to-one factory will continue to provide, through government, resources to assist the one-to-one companies to grow on to a path where they no longer need additional government support. And interestingly, KOD, it's not only in Ghana. In even the most capitalistic economies, the amount of government support that goes to lift up private enterprises is unbelievable. We tend to get the impression that, let's say in the United States of America, when it's private and purely. No. The amount of support that the U.S. government provides to small and medium and even to large companies is very significant. So it's the same thing. Government does not need to get into business, but government needs to support those who are in business. And so in the second phase, we are hoping that, for example, if under phase one, KOD wanting to establish a tomato processing factory in his district is able to do so with government support by taking advantage of, let's say, incentives that would allow him to bring in all the equipment duty-free. That's one of the incentives.
The things we spoke about.
The other one was to be able to access loans at a concessionary rate. So you're able to do all that. Now you're up and running, but now you need working capital. If you need working capital, government cannot abandon those factories midstream, because now they need to support, particularly those that started off as greenfield projects, brand new companies. They need between 2 to 5 years to really stand on their own.
Right.
And that is where, in the second phase, additional government support. This is not free money. This is government incentivizing the banks to provide additional working capital to the companies.
Brilliant. I'm satisfied with this answer. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers will be satisfied with this answer as well. But finally on this, because what you have done is that, and I'm just looking at what I have here, what you have done is that you found a way of looking into the other areas that I was going to ask you questions on. Because the banks lending to manufacturing. Exactly. That's absolutely. So, but I just want us specifically to address this, maybe just in a minute, and then we'll look at the manufacturing sector where you want it to be youth driven. Because I'm seeing that you want to facilitate the establishment of youth-owned large-scale industrial companies for groups of unemployed young people in different districts across the country to be managed by experienced semi-retired and retired management professionals under the auspices of Ghana Executive Services Organization, a new management services company to be established. That's incredible. But let's look at this issue of Komenda Sugar Factory. And why we were not able to revive it. Because it's also another question that has been lingering in the minds of many Ghanaians.
Keeps on
coming up. But I just want finally for us to address it, and then we'll leave it here.
Very well.
And then we come back and look at this particular Gesu, concept that you want to introduce.
Yeah.
By the way, I love it.
Yes.
So let's just address that. A minute.
Now,
more than a minute.
One would have said was a typical 1D, 1F type company.
Right.
So, yes, a district, KEA, that's the district.
That's my constituency.
Now, no, that's your district?
Yeah, that's where I'm from Elmina.
Wow.
Yes, indeed. See why I asked you a question about Komenda Sugar Factory.
Now, so typical classic case of 1D, 1F. Medium, large scale industry in a rural community, in a district. The only difference is that this was a government-owned company.
Okay.
In this particular case, it would have been KOD coming from KEA, responding to government's request to for citizens to establish factories. So that would have been the difference. Now, NDC, obviously, when they came into power, took over the Komenda Sugar Factory, which had been dysfunctional for many years, for a number of reasons. Because it was one of the Nkrumah state-owned enterprises. So they borrowed an amount of $35 million from Exim Bank of India to establish or to revamp the Komenda Sugar Factory. So they brought in equipment. And by October 2016, just before the elections, they decided to commission this
edifice.
I like that, this factory.
Yeah.
Now, they went through a commission process, and it was very clear that the entire processing operation had not been completed. So ordinarily, they ought not to have been commissioned at that time, because there were a few other things that needed to be brought into before they could become fully operational.
I get
it. They went ahead, commissioned it, and then they appointed a transaction advisor to go through a process of divesting government interests, basically selling off the factory to shares, significant, I think 70% shares to a private investor. Good, brilliant idea. Trying to move from where Nkrumah was with it being purely state-owned. So there was no problem with that. Now, but what happened was that they went through the process and finally got a company selected out of the process. But 2016 election, they went out of government. So MPP came in. I was appointed Minister of Industry. And then I took over. Now, my interest was that this fits very much into the one district, one factory concept. And so if NDC was interested in selling off to an investor, it's like an existing company, support it to grow. Perfect. It fits into my program framework. So I invited the company that won the bid.
That same company?
That same company. Okay. Because look, I have been very consistent with my politics. It doesn't matter. We are there to secure the interests of Ghana, not political parties. So I said, well, yes, we are new in government. If NDC went through a process, let's hand it over to the one who won the bid. So I invited the company. And interestingly, the company said they were not interested in continuing with the transaction again, because the amount that they bid for They've realized now, after being given the offer to take it over,
it's not profitable.
That it will not be profitable, and that the value that they are putting on it is not. It doesn't make sense. So he would only be able to offer 15 million USD. Now, meanwhile, we've borrowed 35 million USD. A new factory commissioned, take it over. According to him, his valuation says that it cannot be more than 50 million USD.
No.
So he was no longer interested, which is very strange for a new government to allow a process to continue after changeover. So then I went to cabinet and brought this to the attention of cabinet, indicating that we have no choice. If the gentleman or the company is not interested, then let us find new investors. Yeah. So we got the same transaction advisor to initiate a new process to bring in new. Interestingly, all the bids that we got, none of them went beyond 20 million. 20 million US. There was one that was about 21 million US dollars, as against 35 million US dollars. Then this was a bit intriguing. So we decided that we would make an offer, and it was a Ghanaian company. We made an offer to the Ghanaian company. Now, lo and behold, they didn't even have the money to take up that assignment. So, all the others bid either 50 million USD or below, reinforcing this whole thinking that the value of the company had been overblown. You borrow $35 million, new factory, nobody is prepared to pay more than $15 million. So fast forward, I went back to cabinet and made a request that every one that bid is not prepared to pay more than $16 million for this company. So how do we make the difference? But there was one company that was prepared now to take it up on a lease basis, and they were going to pay $3 million every year. So we did a calculation. All this is very transparent. It went to cabinet, we reported to parliament. So 3 million over a period of 12 years. We realized that, well, that's good money.
Yeah, of course.
In fact, within 1 year, we could even, or within a period of, if we're paying 3 million every year, then over a period of time, we could get something roughly
around the 35.
Yes, around the 35. So we opted for that. We went through a whole elaborate process with the same transaction advisor, government sitting back and letting the professionals do the work. When finally it was approved, this investor also started saying that no, he doesn't think the 3 million he can pay because the factory is not worth the offer. So it meant that there was something wrong.
Something fishy going on.
Something fishy going on. And so the matter was actually taken to Yoko for a forensic audit. Fast forward, here you have a factory.
Nobody's interested.
Nobody's interested. But I made a case to cabinet that we still owe a responsibility to the people of Komenda. And this is also consistent with our industrialization agenda. So then we decided that we would bring in a management team, management contractor, at least to keep the factory running. And then later on, we can attract a new investor. So that's what I did before I left office.
I see.
It came back to life. It was revamped, everything, and we did another trial commissioning before I left.
I see. All right. I think the matter has been settled. I love the confit juice, by the way.
So typical one this one
I love the
factory.
confusion. There's a lot more to talk about here on the show, so please don't move a muscle. We'll be right back.
I say, you be who know me who be when I say, here goes the air, so when I say, go be the place to buy you may. I say, the ref is a bit dry, I say, Alan Cash, I say, the this car is upon wine, I say, and the car labash, I say, that's a blue and the bar, I say, never buy balu, I say, buy in the bride, I say, everything I do, I say, you must shine your eye, I say, before you shine your shoe, I say, well, I won't nine it, I say, you want to work on boo, I say, hey, I say, I say, Munjai, I say, I say, I dey come like Alan Cash, Alan Cash, plenty money for my bank, I say, for my bank, I say, I say, I say, Munjai, I say, I say, I dey come like Alan Cash, I say.
We are back. This is Alan Speaks Primetime Show. My name again is Kwame Owusu Danso. We're talking industrialization. And Honorable Alan Kyerematen has responded to a number of the questions that I believe all of you do have, particularly the question on the Komenda Sugar Factory. And I'm sure now it's a settled matter, and hopefully we are not going to bring it up again. So let's go through the other aspects of the industrialization, plan that you have for this country, particularly the second one that I mentioned.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So let's look at that and
what I realized in now developing and implementing the 1 District 1 Factory program was that, so how do we deal with young people?
Mm-hmm.
How can they be involved in this one great program? They don't have the capital, they don't have the managerial capacity to be involved in the 1 District 1 Factory program. So I created a new model outside the 1 District 1 Factory, but still within the concept
of the 1 District
1
Factory,
that
right?
Government can group young people together, establish a company on their behalf, and then instead of KOD now wanting to build a sugar factory, government then supports the young people in Komenda to actually own the factory.
Right.
So how do you do it? You provide access to a concessionary loan from the banks to allow the young people to order the equipment. But this is all government facilitating this process. And then, because now they've now become like owners.
They will manage it well.
But then government also realized that they may not have the managerial capacity.
Right.
But once they own it, if they get support in terms of management assistance, then that deficiency is cured.
Right.
And so the plan was that let us now also bring together managers, particularly those who are semi-retired and retired, who are sitting at home, who have the expertise, who can then be engaged by these young company now to support them in managing, let's say, the new sugar factory.
Right.
It's a very innovative program. Because what you do is that now you are bringing young people into mainstream economic activity by government supporting them. And then you are also making sure that you provide not just the financial support, but the managerial support for them to own the company and then also to manage the company.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so this is what is meant by facilitate access or let's say facilitate the establishment of youth-owned large-scale industrial companies for groups of unemployed young people in different districts across the country, to be managed by experienced, semi-retired and retired professionals under the auspices of new management. So this is speaking exactly to this. Now, under One District, One Factory program, we're able to create 58 youth-owned companies out of this. So this is not talking theory.
That's what excites me.
It is already,
there's evidence.
There's evidence. 58 youth-owned companies created out of the One District, One Factory program, which now is evidence of the fact that it can be done. So when Alan becomes president, the GTP is saying that we'll try and replicate this for different groups of young unemployed people. Can you imagine? Today you're unemployed. The next day, you are now part of a group of 50 young unemployed people who own maybe the largest maize processing factory in their district.
So you're even bringing back the concept of communal living, socialization.
Absolutely.
Bringing young people together to teach them how to work together.
But in a modern way.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, so this is going beyond the concept of cooperatives. We cooperatives normally would identify individuals and help them to do little things, but then they can work together. This is setting a corporate entity, a formal corporate entity, but it being owned by young people.
Yeah. What excites me also is the fact that you've done your own audit report. You've identified, you know, even the number of young people. Retired people, semi-retired people. You've identified all of them, and you're saying that this is how you're going to do it. That's brilliant. Let's move beyond this one and also touch on the other aspects of it, where you said you facilitate access to medium and long-term capital for manufacturing companies with support from the Development Bank of Ghana, and by expanding the scope of the Ghana incentive-based risk sharing system for agricultural lending to cover strategic industrial sectors of the economy. And then also you want to provide tax incentives to banks that provide new lending to companies operating in selected industries. I'm happy again that this has found expression here because it was in the youth policy.
Yes.
So I remember that it was in the youth.
Now you have artificial intelligence.
Of course. It was
you are making things.
And then also to provide tax relief to companies that were employing new. This was also in the youth policy.
Yes.
Provide, training grants to support local enterprises in strategic sectors to cover the cost of skilled training. This was also in the youth policy, but in a different way.
Yes.
I like it because when you said that when the young graduates come from the university, any company that will support them to provide skilled training, I remember that. Then provide support to private business promoters to establish industrial parks in different parts of the country, which will improve access to land, utilities, and business. I love this one. Please expand on that.
Before
the other ones, I think, start from there.
So it is only reinforcing the fact that if you want to industrialize, government must provide incentives. Incentives that would include facilitating access to credit, incentives by way of fiscal incentives, tax incentives, tax reliefs. So all the things that you read are meant to point to government's promotion, facilitation, and support for private enterprise. And also goes to explain this whole concept of an enterprise economy, which we started with in our introductory episode.
Yes.
That what Ghana needs now is an enterprise economy. An enterprise economy is a private sector-led economy. An economy that is driven by the business sector, and government only supports the business sector. So all these government facilitation and support is meant to incentivize the private sector, the business sector to grow. But the link to industrial parks is still the same thing. That if you want industrialization to occur, you need access to land.
Absolutely.
You need access to serviced land, not just land. You need access to affordable energy, water, and all sewage services. So typically in the Asian economies, their industrial development agenda has been on the back of what we call industrial parks. So industrial parks are enclaves or land that has been acquired and has been provided with electricity, water, and all the things that would help industries to grow. So when you locate your factory in an industrial park, it means that you have all the infrastructure requirements that will make your company become productive. So it's not just government providing fiscal incentives, tax and other incentives, but also providing access to the type of infrastructure facilities that will make any company survive. So that's where the industrial parks come in. So you can see from this that the GTP, beyond the One District, One Factory program, seeks now to extend the concept of government facilitating industrialization to all other sectors. That is what this is about.
All other sectors, including strategic anchor industries.
Very well.
And, you want to accelerate the implementation of 10, strategic anchor industries, which will serve as a new growth pool to diversify the Ghanaian economy. I've seen some pharma, petrochemical and things like that. Can you expand on that?
So what
and
this
how
is,
you
so what
do
this
that?
is saying is that
Yes, sir.
One District, One Factory is a great program. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So now you have over 260 companies, in different districts. However, as an economy, as a country, we want to be sure that beyond these factories that are springing up all over the country, have we been able to identify new strategic sectors or mega sectors that would develop our country beyond cocoa? Because as you know, the country has depended on one commodity. Can you believe this? Only one commodity for 100 years. Ghanaians have not been able to think beyond cocoa. For what reason? I do not know. But what the GTP is saying is that for you to have a quantum leap in development, which is what transformation is about. Transformation is quantum change or significant change. If you want significant change, you cannot stay only with cocoa. So we've identified 10 new strategic industries that will diversify the Ghanaian economy. And that is what
take us through.
So number one
Take us through.
is vehicle assembly and component manufacturing. So I'm not just talking, I'm living the talk. When I had the opportunity of being minister under President Kwadwo's government, one of these strategic anchor industries, which has already taken off in a big way, is the vehicle assembly and component manufacturing.
Yeah, you did that.
Within a matter of 1.5 years, just through policy, mind, and then paper, I was able to attract 5 out of the 6 leading automobile companies around the world to establish assembly plants in Ghana. And you have now Volkswagen producing vehicles here. You have Nissan, you have Toyota, you have Kia, you have Hyundai, you have Peugeot, all within 1.5 years. This is just through introducing the right policy, which is what the GTP is about, a policy blueprint. If you have the right policy, the money will come in. Government does not need to go and borrow to set up assembly plants.
Now, flowing from that, many are those who have asked this salient question, that it is precisely why the introduction of these assembly companies, which is why Kantanka is not really the company that we want it to be. What would be your response be to that? So, and again, what would be your specific policy directed at indigenous, manufacturing companies, specific vehicle assembly companies in Ghana, for instance?
But that's why I was referring to negative propaganda and politics.
Okay.
Because Kantanka is one of the licensed companies under this new policy framework.
Brilliant.
In actual fact, Kantanka's production has increased significantly beyond contemplation. And the Professor, Apostle Kwadwo Kyerematen himself is a living testimony of what this new industrial policy framework can do for our country. So people just hear about these companies, but Kantanka has the most advanced license amongst all these global players.
Oh, I see.
Yes. We specifically made sure that they got a license that will allow them to do even more. So if you see the new generation vehicles that are coming out of Kantanka, it's all because of this policy.
I see.
Yeah, but maybe unfortunately people don't know. Yes, you are right.
But
but just to add,
please
so it's not just the assembly of vehicles. Now we are going beyond that to establish a component manufacturing industry, meaning we are now going to produce spare parts and the parts that will go into the assembly of vehicles. And apart from South Africa, maybe Morocco, there's no other country that now has a vibrant auto industry like Ghana. And Ghana is now being celebrated throughout the world for a small country that has been able to attract these big multinational companies, including also supporting a local company like Kantanka.
What do you mean by industrial salt?
Yes. So industrial salt is one of the strategic anchor industries, the 10 industries that we are talking about. You come from Amina.
Yes.
You know that we have a lot of industrial salt in Amina.
Call it the white gold.
It's the white gold.
Yeah.
Now, industrial salt is the basic raw material for the production of caustic soda and alum. What alum is used as a water purification material. So without alum, you cannot purify water. And that comes from industrial salt. But can you imagine that Ghana is one of the few countries in Africa, not more than 3 or 5 countries in Africa, that has industrial salt deposits. And unfortunately, we are not making use of it. We have it in Anda, we have it in the central region, we have it in Songo, so many other places, but unfortunately, we are not making. So this particular anchor industry is meant to develop the salt sector as one of the leading industrial sectors beyond cocoa. And it was actually started during President Kufuor's time. I started this, it was one of the presidential special initiatives.
I see.
Yes.
Wow.
So we have...
You know exactly what you're talking about.
So it is a continuation of what I started during President Kufuor's time. So we have vehicle assembly, we have garments and textiles.
Yes, yes.
Can you imagine that a country like Bangladesh exports $30 billion worth of garments and textiles into the United States market and around the world? 30 billion every year. So can you imagine that Ghana can replicate this? And if we don't even get to the level of generating 30 billion, we could even do half. If we did half of what Bangladesh is doing under the Africa Growth and Opportunity AGWA, I'm sure you've heard about AGWA, that allows us to export goods duty-free and quota-free to the US market. If we did half of what Bangladesh is doing, we'll be generating 15 billion US dollars every year through export revenue. Can you imagine the impact of that on our economy? If cocoa gives us only 2 billion a year, this is giving us 15 billion. So the next one, that's government. The next one is pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Ghana imports 70% of our medication requirement. 70%. We only produce 30%. So the reason why we selected this as one of the strategic anchor industries is the fact that if we scale up manufacturing of medication, we can reduce our importation of medicines and also increase our export of medication. And the global value, market value for pharmaceuticals is 1.48 trillion. That's the global market value for pharmaceutical products. 1.5 trillion, not billion. So it means that this is what Ghana needs to be doing. Then there's also the petrochemical industry. Why are we exporting oil and gas without adding value? When, if we did value addition to our oil and gas, we'll get fertilizers, we will get bitumen that is used for our roots. And we'll get plastics. You know that plastics, the how do you call them? The small granules, the granules, plastic granules that are used to produce plastics. They all come from the value addition, adding value to oil and gas. So we are losing so much by exporting our oil and gas.
It's for fault.
Yes. So that's why it's one of the new industries that we are promoting. We are also
integrated bauxite and aluminium.
You already know this. We have so much aluminium. We have so much bauxite. And Kuma built Vaco. And unfortunately, because we don't have the fully integrated sector, we are selling our bauxite to the external market and then importing aluminium. Can you believe that? So this is about producing our own aluminium from our own bauxite. The same thing applies to the next one, which is producing steel.
Iron and steel.
From our own iron ore resource. We have very high quality iron ore in Western region and in the Northern region.
Right.
Iron ore, which is what gives you steel. So can you imagine that with the implementation of these new industries, we can get aluminium, we can get steel, we can get plastics, and we can get rubber from our rubber plantations. These are all the components you need to manufacture a car. So you can now appreciate what this means.
Right.
And it's also about not just these, what I would call heavy industries. We're also looking at assembly of electronic appliances. Why do we have to import air conditioners, fridges, when in the 60s we were producing
them in Ghana?
They were producing them in Ghana. So
we need to revisit
all these things. And then last but not the least is the manufacturing of machinery and equipment. You cannot industrialize without having your capacity to produce your own equipment. So these are new strategic industries that will diversify and blow up the economy in a big way.
In your estimation, how do you think all these 10 anchor industries will affect the employment opportunities for the young people in this country?
Not less than 5 million jobs. Not less than 5 million jobs would come out of these new strategic anchor industries. So you can imagine, look at all the 10 different industries that I'm talking about. So the reason why there are no jobs is because our economy is not diversified.
Yeah, it's constricted.
How many people can you employ in the cocoa sector?
Yeah.
But if you start talking about vehicles, you start talking about aluminium sector, iron ore, steel, then you're talking. So this is what we call the real deal.
Right.
It's about jobs, and this is the most comprehensive program for job creation. None of the two dominant parties have ever demonstrated that and even now that they are coming out with their manifestos, you can see that there is no policy orientation that would give Ghanaians the hope that they can solve the problem of unemployment. But even from the strategic anchor, forget about even one district, one factory. Apart from one district, one factory, if the GTP is talking about 10 new strategic industries to diversify the economy beyond cocoa and gold, then this is the real answer.
Okay, I'm not going to end this conversation on just the identification of and the explanation of the 10 anchor industries. I'm also going to go further into that and then look at how these 10 anchor industries will deal with some other interventions. So because we are looking at 5 main interventions which will emanate out of this.
Yes.
And I think that it's important that we touch on that.
Yeah.
I would plead with the producers today because industry is your thing.
Yes.
And I don't want a situation where we will not be able to exhaust this. So if we have to do this, exhaust the industry bit, and then do the tourism and the others, we'll put them together. I don't have a problem because the industry is your mainstay. It's your forte. So we need to really delve into. I don't want us to rush through it. And as you have explained, it is the engine of growth.
That's the engine of growth.
If you're going to have your macro,
everywhere in the world.
Absolutely. So we need to really spend time, and get a better understanding of it. For me, it's important. So you're talking about the fact that there are 5 main categories of interventions to be applied to each of the export commodities. You mentioned the export commodities that will emanate out of the 10 anchor industries that you've made. But most importantly, and I like this, how you have categorized them. Category 1, you're looking at production and supply based expansion. Category 2, you're looking at export market development. Category 3, you're looking at manpower development and training. Category 4, incentives and regulatory framework. Category 5, cross-cutting issues. Please expand on each of them.
Very well.
Expand on them properly.
We've been talking now about increasing industrial production, either through the one district, one factory, or through the strategic anchor industries. But ultimately, what are we looking for with this industrial production and the expansion of companies? Now, we are looking at enhancing exports. Because if you don't produce, you cannot export. So, like you rightly pointed out, once you are able to start off these 10 new anchor industries, once you are able to support the one district, one factory program, it means now you are in a capacity to export more. And because of that, I've identified some specific commodities that Ghana, under the GTP, will now be able to export. Number 1 is cocoa products. Right now, we are exporting cocoa beans, again, without adding value. We do some semi-processing, but what I call the real value from cocoa is not in the pod, but it's in the tertiary product, the final product that comes out of it. The chocolate and the other cocoa powder, drinking powder, and things like that. So that's number 1. Number 2 is wood products. Can you imagine? I'm sure you recall, you went to University of Science at UST.
Yeah, Tech. Of course, the best university in the world.
You must definitely have heard about the big timber companies in Kumasi that were producing veneer, plywood, and other wood products. So that is an area that has been left completely out.
True.
We are no longer even talking about processing of wood. Then there's processed fish, including tuna. Look, the amount of money that Ghana can make just from the export of tuna, processed tuna, is amazing. All this, there's no plan for that. Then there's plastics. Remember, we are talking about plastics. So it means that immediately that can become one of the export products.
Yep.
Then there's vegetable oils, one of the strategic anchor industries. We didn't get to talk about oil palm because that's one of the strategic because you know that Malaysia learned how to grow, cultivate the oil palm from Ghana.
Yeah.
But now every year Malaysia makes 20 billion US dollars every year from oil palm alone. Now Ghana, apart from our palm soup, apart from a little that we do with it, what are we doing in this country? Somebody that you taught to cultivate oil palm is making 20 billion every year. Now you are making 2 billion from cocoa. So if you did even half of what Malaysia is doing with oil palm, and there's so much land, and people are prepared to work. It's just the leadership and the direction. So now vegetable oils can also be a major export. Rubber, we talked about rubber. Then aluminium products, and then horticultural products, cashew nuts, textiles and garments, pharmaceuticals, arts and crafts. So you can see that this is all proper integrated planning. You are now developing strategic anchor industries, and these anchor industries is what enhances your capacity to export.
Right.
So now you have how many? Now you have 12 export commodities that will become the basis for your export program. And so somebody will ask, fine, now we understand what you want to export. But what kind of support is government going to provide for these exports actually to occur? Because you are talking about an enterprise economy. This is not government producing these products. This is about the business sector producing these commodities. And there are 5 things that the government will do to support the export of these commodities. One is production. You can talk about all these products. If you don't produce, you cannot export. Secondly, you're talking about identifying the specific market opportunities. You are encouraging people to produce vegetable oils. But where are they going to sell in a global market? Where is the oil going to be sold? Is it in Africa? Is it in other parts of the world? So that is export market identification. Then manpower. All these are new industries. Do our universities, our other polytechnics, vocational educational institutions, have they trained the kind of manpower to feed into these industries? That's part of government support. And then there's what are the regulatory reforms that we need? We need a completely overhauled business environment if you want all these export commodities now to become a reality. And last but not the least, yes, we want to produce all these products, but in doing so, we don't want to destroy the environment. You want to promote cashew, but you don't want to destroy the environment. You want to promote oil palm cultivation, but don't destroy the environment. You want to do these things, are you going to take care of women? So gender issues also coming. So there are these cross-cutting issues that are also important.
Brilliant. Let me go for this quick break. When I return, we will look at the other sectors therein. So stay with us, don't move a muscle. I shall return shortly.
Watawani, I say, you be who no me who be away. I say, here goes the air, so when I say, be the place to buy you may. I say, the ref is a bit dry, I say, Alan Cash, I say, this car goes up on wine, I say, and the car I say, that's a blue and the bar, I say, never buy balu, I say, my husband in the bride, I say, everything I do, I say, before shine your eye, I say, before you shine your shoe, I say, well, I won't nine it, I say, you want to work on boo, I say, hey, I say, I say, Moonjai, I say, I they come like Alan Cash, Alan Cash, plenty money for my bank, for my bank, I say, I say, I say, Moonjai, I say, I they come like Alan Cash, I say.
Welcome back to Alan Speaks Prime Time show. My name again is Kwame Owusu Danso. We are still having a conversation with Honorable Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen, and he's explaining to us his policy on industrialization. And I think that you've been following the conversation. I think at the very least you understand, the basics in his policy to transform Ghana. Now, we're going to be touching on SMEs and for young businesses, for young adults, even for older adults. I'm sure you are very interested in small and medium enterprise development. And Honorable Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen did not take you out of the equation. You are actually in his contemplation. You've been in his contemplation when he was a minister, and you are still in his contemplation in his bid to becoming the president of the Republic of Ghana. Now, he is intimating to us that he understands that the Ghanaian economy predominantly is also predicated on the survival or otherwise of small and medium enterprises. And you want to actually, grease it the more, for the purposes of ensuring that we realize the full benefit of, from these SME development. So can you give us, first of all, a cursory overview of that, and then we'll go into the specifics?
Okay, very well. Every economy thrives on a certain component or section of its private sector. Now, in Africa, particularly in Ghana, it just happens that our economy is dominated by small and medium enterprises. So 90% of our enterprise base is made up of micro, small, and medium enterprises. So if you want to develop your economy, it is not possible to do so without paying attention to this class or group of companies. And also, interestingly, they also generate almost like 80% of employment.
Yes.
Almost 80% of employment comes through small and medium enterprise. So if you want, at the micro level, your economy to survive and to be strong, the key is supporting small and medium enterprise. And that's why the GTP, or a government led by Alan Kyerematen, would focus primarily on developing small and medium enterprises. So then the question would be, what exactly are you going to do to support
Brilliant. You've actually taken the wind out of my sail. I was going to ask you that question. Yes.
So the first thing is to enhance access. And it says very clear here, enhance access to affordable credit to SMEs, including providing loan guarantee support. It's very, very, very important. Money is the lifeblood of any business. So if we are interested as a government, as a country, to support the enterprise sector in Ghana, and by extension, the small and medium enterprises, it's about providing and facilitating access to money. Without money, you cannot grow your companies. And that is why if you go to the US, all the mega companies that we are celebrating in Ghana and all over the world, whether it is Facebook or it is Amazon, all these companies, billion-dollar companies, they all started as small companies, but with the support of government through loan guarantee schemes. What a loan guarantee scheme does is that it provides comfort to banks to lend to SMEs who under normal circumstances are deemed to be risky, and are not attractive to the banks. So if you look at the portfolio of banks in Ghana, nobody wants to touch smaller and medium enterprise because number one, they don't have collateral security. They cannot provide equity, which are the two fundamental requirements for you to get a loan. So it means that SMEs are not attractive to the banks. If government is desirous of facilitating the flow of money from the banks to the SMEs, it means that government has to fill these two gaps. Make sure that the banks will lend to them without security. And the only way banks will lend to a company without security is through a loan guarantee scheme. It means that government has now put aside a fund, some money, which in the event that a bank that is lending to an SME is unable to recover the loan, then the loan guarantee money then kicks in. So when banks have a guarantee from government that in the event of default, government will pay the banks, then you don't have a problem.
Yeah.
They will lend. Because after all, 90% of enterprises are SMEs. So if they don't lend to SMEs, who are they going to lend to? So it's not as if that the banks are not interested in SMEs. They are. But the risk associated with lending to the SMEs makes it difficult for them to lend to them. So the first thing is our loan guarantee support.
And the second thing is also grant funding, venture capital, leasing, and angel investments.
So I also talked about the fact that if you don't have security, you cannot get a loan.
Yeah.
But then banks will also ask for equity. So you want 100,000 cedis from the banks. The banks will tell you, bring 25% of that. Bring 25, you want 100,000. The banks will ask you to bring 25,000 Ghana cedis as your equity. They call it your skin in the game. Because if you don't have any commitment, what have you put in the business to ask a bank to give you additional money? So they are also looking for equity beyond the collateral. So the loan guarantee from government will deal with the security part. But what about the equity? It means that you still have to fill that gap. And that is why there are different financial instruments that provide equity. One of it is venture capital. So it means government will now support the establishment of venture capital companies. Once government supports venture capital companies, these are not government companies. These are private individuals who want to set up venture capital companies, and government supports them. Once government supports them, then they can now also put equity into the SMEs. Once they put equity into the SMEs, and then they are getting a guarantee also from government, then they fulfill the two criteria for them now to be able to attract money from the banks. And then in some cases also, even in the matured economies, sometimes they give them free money, grants, actual grants. For example, KOD now after interviewing me on Alan Speaks, begins to realize that, yes, I'm very interested in broadcasting. I'm a showman myself. I've been in the music industry. But from what Alan is saying, actually, I'm wasting my time. I need to get into industry, into manufacturing. But if from the GTP, Alan's government is going to provide all these incentives, and now I can have easier access to loans from the banks or from the venture capital company, then this becomes attractive. So when we were discussing the youth program, you recall?
I was actually going on because there's a symbiotic relationship between them.
Everything
so it's interconnected.
Is interconnected.
Yeah.
Everything is interconnected. Because now we are saying that there is no reason why you should leave school and sit at home looking for a job from either government or even from another company. With all these that government is going to provide, get up, dream big, go to the Business Resource Center, which we'll talk about, and then that's your path towards becoming a millionaire. So the financing is very important.
Right.
But then the grant, the venture capital financing is also important. And then 4 talks about, you can read that.
Facilitate access to physical infrastructure to support the development of SMEs, including but not limited to industrial sites, access to utilities and retail market infrastructure.
So now you have access to money. Now you need a place to site your factory. So it's either you go the one district, one factory way and go and acquire land in your district and go to the one district, one factory path. Or if you want to establish it anywhere else, then what this is saying that government will now provide access to physical infrastructure. Physical infrastructure means land. And it says, physical infrastructure, including land, industrial sites, access to utilities. So when government provides access to industrial sites, it means that, let's say they go to Elmina and they've created an industrial site. They've put in electricity, they've put in water, they've put in sewage plant. So companies can now have the appetite to go and settle in those industrial sites. So it's physical infrastructure, it is money.
I see.
That's how you grow companies.
There's the BRR, but I want us to try and look at the other legs. 5 talks about expanding market opportunities for SME products and services, including but not limited to facilitating access to shelf space in commercial retail outlets, public procurement contracts, targeting SME product, e-commerce platforms, domestic retail and export markets. So you're just going to take advantage of every space available to ensure that we create that environment for SMEs.
Absolutely, because now Alan's government is going to support every Ghanaian, young, old, to start their own business.
Doesn't matter where you are.
There's a window that allows you to be able to access funding. There's a window that allows you now to be able to locate your business in a properly serviced location or site. But then, once you start producing, you have to be able to sell to pay off your loan. And so, this additional intervention by government is meant to help you to be able to market your products. And marketing your products through a variety of channels. There's e-commerce now, being able to sell through digital platforms. But then domestic retail market infrastructure. I've been talking, when I visit the markets, I've been talking about improving the market infrastructure in Ghana. if you go to a market, Kewri, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
But this is where you can promote made in Ghana goods. So instead of market women, everybody selling imported goods. If Alan's government is going to expand industrial production, then they have to have a place where they will offload their goods so then our market women can now take advantage of increased production from SMEs now to sell in the market. So all that is there. Every opportunity. You talk about shelf space. In other countries, let's say Maxmart, the big retail shops, some of them are all selling imported products. What this is ShopRite and all this, what this proposal is saying is that we would negotiate with all these big retail companies, domestic and foreign companies, to allocate part of their shelf life to sell made in Ghana goods produced by SMEs.
Wow, that's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's the policy is so palatable that I'm struggling to skip some, because of time.
Yes.
Okay, but let's look at, because I mean, all your political peers, are talking about digitization, innovation, and all of that. But in my estimation, what sets you apart is your ability to now create that connectivity between innovation, technology, and commerce.
Yes.
And I like that you have actually highlighted that here.
Yes.
Where you're talking about the facilitation of access to technology and innovation to improve productivity and quality standards. Because you are saying that for us to be able to export the commodities that we'll be producing here, we need to add value to it.
Yes.
And value comes out of quality.
Yes.
And so that's
essentially the standards come in.
Yeah.
So you see, when you talk about digitization, it is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. But just talking about it theoretically, it doesn't.
What is it going to do?
And it's not only about digitization to support public services. That's where we are getting it wrong. It's digitization throughout the
whether
entire
private or public.
And you can see the influence of digitization in an enterprise economy. If you digitize, let's say, identity cards and you have one, that is good. But the real deal is how does that support businesses?
I agree with you.
That's where the real deal is.
I agree with
how
you.
Does digitization is not just ID card, national ID card.
Yeah.
You see that? We are getting it
I
wrong.
agree with you 100%,
Digitization is not addresses, no.
Yeah.
It goes beyond
GPS.
that. That's a small part of it. It is how you digitalize the entire economic system. I hope you are getting it.
No, it's like the example that you gave about
when I talk about digitization,
you are linking it.
It is the real access to innovation and technology, but to support
businesses,
production, marketing, and everything else, and distribution.
I mean, you are right, because our consistent heralding of the topic of digitalization, particularly at the ports, did not yield any results, because now you see the leakages, you see the loopholes that we spoke about the last time, that even though we claim to have digitalized the ports, we are still losing billions of Ghana cedis. So you are looking at not just introducing it, but finding a way of marrying that with the other,
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Mainstreaming it in the system.
Brilliant. Fantastic. I will skip the Gesso because you have explained it previously. And then move to this one. Support the management and operations of business resource centers. That's, and technology solution centers. at the district level throughout the country to provide a comprehensive range of business development services to SMEs. Currently, there are 67 BRCs and 21 TSCs in operation across the country. You introduced that?
I introduced that.
Brilliant.
Within a matter of 3 years. You remember there was something called the NDSSI.
But you see, my problem with you is that you don't.
I do so much. I'm too modest. I'm too modest about
because I'm hearing. Because I know there's a sense of
what I've done even for the NPP administration when I was minister for that, it is unparalleled. And not only that, President Kufuor's success, when people talk about the golden age of business, if you ask President Kufuor himself, he will attest to it. 70 to 80% of it was through the kind of innovative interventions that I introduced. Even Maslow. Yeah, Maslow was my original idea.
I see.
Yes.
You are young at heart. So you vibe with the young people. Because I've heard of this, but I didn't know.
You see, so what I said was that now, if you really want to promote an enterprise economy, you want a KOD to start focusing on how can I become a businessman and start making big money? Immediately, your senses will point to one direction. So Alan has said it, but after the interview, where do I go to? Who is now going to take me through the business, the rudiments of how to get a business plan prepared, how to even concretize my ideas, which bank do I go to, what kind of equipment, how do I select my equipment? All these things, you need a place where you can go to. And that's why I created these business resource centers throughout the country, staffed with people who have the experience to support businesses. And it's the same thing that happens in the United States. They call them Small Business Development Centers, SBDC, which is part of what they call the Small Business Administration. So I recreated this Ghana Enterprises Agency, GE, which was formerly NDSSI. So I rebranded, recreated the Ghana Enterprises Agency. Now, under the Ghana Enterprises Agency, now we have created these business resource centers so that when you enter a business resource center, they'll help you even in refining your business idea and holding your hand throughout. This is something I've been doing for years. When I started Empretech, you see, Empretech, 1990, when I started Empretech. Empretech is what you now call a business resource center. I started this 1990. And the kind of big companies that you have in Ghana, many of them came through Empretech. Casapreco. Dr. Otin Jesse at that time came through Empretech. Mr. Moses Baden, who is now the national ID card, the one who introduced the national ID card technology. He's a lawyer. But when I set up Empretech, he's a fantastic guy. Even as a lawyer, young lawyer, he came to Empretech. And he was focused so much on becoming a strong businessman that he took everything that Empretech was teaching very seriously. So we are very proud of people like that. In fact, we use them as role models. Look at where he has come from as a lawyer to where he is now. Casapreco, look at where he started from and where he is now. So it actually works. And it was all because they had the support of a business resource center, which was like Empretech. So what I've been doing, it's all grounded in reality. This is not just talk. This is not just rhetoric or slogans.
Evidence-based.
This is real evidence-based. And it was because of the kind of work that I did with business resource centers that in 1994, when Mandela, after coming out of prison and becoming president, was looking for support to be able to build up big businesses. He invited experts from around the world, 7 of them. I was one of them. This is in 1994.
Wow.
So when I talk about business resource centers, I know what I'm talking
exactly
about.
What you're talking about.
I set up resource centers in South Africa, in Mauritius, even advanced countries like Mauritius, in Nigeria, in Uganda, in Ethiopia, in Botswana, Enterprise Botswana, Enterprise Mauritius, Enterprise
you did that.
Uganda, all this is in the 90s.
Wow.
So my record is there.
I'm told my time is up. And I'm so hurt that my time is up. But maybe, because, there's, if we're even going to wrap up, okay, I want us to talk about this public-private dialogue.
Okay, all right.
And specifically,
in a minute,
specifically, specifically, just stay on the Presidential Business Summit. I love summits.
Yes. So that this means is that, Kewode, we've been talking today about the importance of industrialization, empowering the business community to go into industrialization, into enterprises. For this to become a reality, we need a very positive business regulatory environment. If the laws, the legislation are not conducive to supporting businesses, nobody will waste their time. So this is also about reducing the bureaucracy. You were talking about having stayed in Rwanda.
Rwanda, yes.
And yes. You know how fast you can set up a business.
Register business. You can stay in your house and then just register.
This is all the business regulatory environment. So it is not just about what I've talked about, helping them to get access to funding, industrial sites, market, but also what is the business environment like? Does it really support business people?
No, it doesn't.
And last but not the least is government talking to the private sector? An Alan government is saying that if you want to have an enterprise economy in Ghana, then it is the private sector that are in the driver's seat and not government. It is the private sector that is driving the economy, not government. They have a steer. Absolutely. And so in that case, government must talk to the private sector in an institutionalized way. It's not a question of a minister coming out arrogantly and then trying to dictate this is what you need. You have to sit with the private sector for them to tell you what they need, and then you put it in policy. Not the other way around. You don't talk policy and then you go and dump it on them. You invite them. So this is what the public-private dialogue is about. You have to institutionalize this. So under an Alan presidency, under my government, this is going to be institutionalized dialogue. It's not ad hoc. So every year, there's what you call a presidential business summit, where Alan will meet with the private sector. We set targets for ourselves, what governments need to do, what the private sector needs to do. And those targets become consolidated in what we call the Ghana Business Compact. You see, so every year, you know the target that we would achieve through business, through the business sector. And then at the summit, we can make a declaration that government has agreed to do this for the private sector. Private sector has agreed that they will do this A, B, C, D. They are going to increase exports by 30%. We are going to get foreign exchange from exports, X amount of. So that we are working towards targets. And at the Presidential Business Summit, which is an annual calendar event, the private sector meets with government. But of course, the president has to be leading this effort. That's why it's called the Presidential Business Summit.
Wow. I feel like clapping for you. Yeah, certainly. So we've come to the end of today's conversation on the GTP. Particularly, we looked at the industrialization. But I mean, what do you have to tell the millions of Ghanaians who are watching you from Ghana, Africa, and the rest of the world?
All I can say to my beloved country and to you, my brothers and sisters, is that for once, let us think about how we can move Ghana forward. It's not about the rhetoric, it's not about the slogans, I listen to what my competitors are talking about. Everything is about government, government, government. You don't have the money and you're still making promises. This is about giving the power to the private sector, to the business community. They are the ones who will create the jobs. They are the ones who understand how to generate wealth for government now to be able to earn revenue. And so my appeal is to ensure that for the first time in our history, we are voting for a president who understands business, a president who has the record, both local and international, and who can, with the support of the private sector, lift Ghana up for us to move from instability to prosperity.
On that note, thank you very much,
Thank you,
Honorable Alan John Kwadwo. I want to thank the viewers for sticking with us. You know, it's been a nice journey, and I trust that you've been learning a lot. I want to assure you that going forward, you're going to even enjoy the conversations the more, because we have a lot for you. We're still going to talk about tourism, agriculture, governance. You know, so there's a lot to talk about. So follow the conversations here on Pan-African Television and on Bright TV and on the Facebook page of Pan-African Television and that of Honorable Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen and all other social media platforms. My name is Kwame Owusu Danso. So this has been Alan Speaks Primetime Show. I'll see you again. Take care. Bye-bye.